some major setbacks early in his career. But 99 has been a breakout season, capturing the pole in his native Brazil, and then joyfully scoring his first win at Road America.
And following that long-awaited victory, a huge victory celebration. It lasted 6 hours at Elkhart Lake. And then Thursday night in this city, the entire Newman Haas team got together for another celebratory dinner. It was a memorable night. Momentum riding high. Everybody's morale way up. Can Fittipaldi string a couple together? That's what he tries to find out today as he starts inside row 3 from the number 5 spot.
The focus in the kart series is once again on versatility. Toronto is a tight street circuit. To achieve success here, each maneuver must be well calculated. 10 races have resulted in 7 different winners. Will that trend continue today on the streets of Toronto? And if we are to have a new winner in kart this weekend, he will have to do it on a temporary street circuit. The second one this year. That means that the barrier walls of concrete are just inches away the entire lap. Can reach out and grab you at any second. Then, too, the surface is changing constantly from concrete to asphalt and back. That unsettles the car in the corners and burns down the tires quickly.
On top of that, it's hot and humid, putting a real toll on driver stamina and fitness. The bumpiness puts a real strain on the gearboxes and the engines. You combine that with concrete walls, you make the slightest miscue, your race in Toronto is over.
The cars are already rolling. Here is the way they qualified, with Gil de Ferran on the pole and Dario Franchitti starting on the outside of the front row. Franchitti has stood on the podium 5 times this season, but he has yet to stand on the top step. Jan?
And Paul, he has started this race twice from the pole position, but twice he has not finished this race. So I asked Dario, is it a relief that now you're starting on the outside of the front row? He said, no, we were bitterly disappointed that we lost the pole position, but I'm confident because the team fixed a braking problem that got me into trouble last year.
Michael Andretti is a 5-time Toronto winner, and a win today could put him in the points lead. Michael will start on the inside of row 2, and a good qualifying for Jimmy Vasser. He starts outside of 2. Our latest winner, Christian Fittipaldi, inside 3. Paul Tracy is on the outside. Now the Canadian Paul Tracy has 1 win to his credit this season. He'd like to repeat his 1993 winning performance at Toronto. In the 4th row, Tony Kanaan. Juan Montoya starting in 8th starting spot. No one's won from there. Brian Herta is inside row 5. Greg Moore is to the outside of the 5th row. In the 6th row, it's Scott Pruitt and Patrick Carpentier. Canadian Patrick Carpentier's most memorable moment of 1999 was that wild ride a week ago at Elkhart Lake. He still searches for his first top 5 of the season. Row 7, Cristiano Damata and Elio Castro Neves. Mimo Gidley, Mauricio Guzman in the 8th row. The 9th row, the irrepressible Roberto Moreno and Max Pappas. In row 10, Michel Jourdain Jr. and P.J. Jones. The 11th row, 2 Toyotas, Richie Hearn and Robbie Gordon. In row 12, Adrian Fernandez, who's struggling this weekend, and Walter Salles. In row 13, Al Unser Jr. and Shigeaki Hattori. And alone in the 14th row is Dennis Vitolo. Now, this track is 11 turns, 1.755 miles, a bit longer than last year, so every lap turn will be a new record given the new distance.
The track runs clockwise. Watch for actions down in turn 1 at the beginning of the race, especially Juan Montoya. On starts and restarts, that's the place to go on the inside or the outside. We have a long back straightaway where the cars reach speeds approaching 190 miles an hour. During the race, turn number 3, where will be all the passing takes place. They've got a quick transitional section up to the fastest corner on the track. Coming around the backside, they reach speeds of 160 miles an hour as they approach turn number 8. It's a quick left-right transition back onto the pit straight, and you've got to get this final corner, turn number 11, done correctly if you want to put together a good lap here.
And taking a look at the onboard cameras, there's Adrian Fernandez, who, as we said, has been struggling, had to move back and forth between his backup and primary, and finally qualified the backup car. Robbie Gordon starting 22nd back in the field. His partner in this team, John Menard, is here at the track. Richie Hearn driving for John Della Penna. A little further forward in the field, here's the Patrick car of T.J. Jones. He'll start in 20th place. And, of course, this is the guy you're really going to have to keep an eye on the start. Juan Montoya, he will start in 8th. And, of course, Michael Andretti will be up in the 2nd row. He starts 3rd. Now, we want to show you the top 10 of the field. one more time so you can get some idea of exactly what to expect on this start, because remember, it funnels down into a very tight right-hand turn. And Gil de Ferran had some questions about their gearbox and changed it this morning to make sure that everything was all right, but they did get the new one in, and they didn't find anything particularly wrong with the one that they had. They just thought it was precautionary and something they ought to do.
The two drivers to keep track of: Juan Montoya in 8th place. He's one of the best starters and restarters in the business. And Adrian Fernandez. He was at the top of the practice sheets both on Friday and Saturday, but had problems during qualifying.
First turn is a right-hander at the Princess Gate. It has been problems in the past. Start-finish line lies just ahead. 95 laps the scheduled distance. Screens out. Here we go. They scream down for the first corner. Christian Fittipaldi goes well inside. Several light up the brakes. Off of the corner, everybody clean. De Ferran leads it off of the corner. Franchitti drops into second place. The long run down shoreline. Paul Tracy trying to make a move back in the field. Still keeping an eye on Montoya for you. Hasn't moved up as much as one might expect. Here's the key passing area on the course. Boy, Christian running down well tight on the inside. Michael Andretti has dropped back. Look at Michael well back in the field now.
One thing to keep in mind here, Gil de Ferran's on Goodyears, and it takes a little bit of extra time for those Goodyears to come up to temperature. Look at Dario Franchitti on the Firestones. He was able to make that pass going down into turn 3 and has taken off.
Michael Andretti has gone all the way back to just in front of Tony Kanaan. That drops him almost 5, or actually 5 places. Dario Franchitti, the leader. Gary Gerould.
Paul, you were talking about the gearbox concerns. Derek Walker did tell us they weren't able to pinpoint the problem. Low oil pressure in the gearbox this morning. As you mentioned, they did replace the entire unit, but they still don't know what caused the problem this morning. They're a little bit concerned that that could creep up at some point here this afternoon, now that we're racing.
Michael Andretti runs 7th, battles with Tony Kanaan. We had mentioned that he did drop back. There is Kanaan on the left side.
He's dropped from 3rd to 7th. He must be having a problem because he, like Montoya, is one of the best on starts and restarts. Kanaan not able to get the job done on the outside, and you can see what a bottleneck it is coming down into this 3rd corner.
At the same time, there was Helio Castroneves, and he was battling with Montoya, got up alongside him, but then had to drop back. Going back to the start of the race, CBC television giving us these images as Christian moves down on the inside. I'll tell you, it looked like Franchitti got bumped and bumped good.
I think there was some contact from Jimmy's right front to Franchitti's left rear there, Paul.
And that's the pass to put Franchitti out in front. De Ferran drops back into 2nd place. Jimmy Vasser sitting back 3rd, then Christian, then Tracy. And there he is, Montoya, as we continue to watch him. Gary Gerould, Michael Andretti dropped back.
Crew a little concerned as well, Paul. We understand a radio query went out to Michael. Are you okay? There has been no answer. He's got his hands full, obviously, in the cockpit, but no indication of a problem. Now they're telling him to go up a couple of notches on the boost. So apparently everything is all right.
Now we can stay here a moment and watch Michael. And Parker, can you decipher anything?
Well, I haven't seen anything unusual yet. We've been watching Michael all weekend long on the onboards. The thing that we picked up at Elkhart Lake is that all the Cosworth runners are able to run a lap with fewer shifts than any of the other motor combinations. They seem to have a very wide power band, but keep in mind this weekend that 6 of the top 8 qualifiers were all Honda power plants, which shows that their drivability is very good. But when we switch to the other onboards, you'll see a lot more shifting going on. But there goes Kanaan down the inside. So Michael having some sort of problem. This is not what you would expect from Michael Andretti at the opening of a race.
And Michael not only saw it coming, he seemed to let it happen. So Michael certainly struggling with this car. Up at the front of the field, it is still Franchitti, then De Ferran, and then Vasser. Michael trying to come back on Kanaan.
And we can see Montoya looking for a way past Michael and Kanaan. This is from Montoya's car now. You can see They come off the asphalt and go into concrete patches. When we get down to turn number 8, you'll see the change in the color of the surface. For this weekend, they have bead blasted these concrete surfaces. There you can see it, to try to give the driver some more grip. But still, it's a situation where they turn, there's a lot of grip, they hit the concrete and slide. It's very, very unnerving to the drivers, and the car catches once it hits the asphalt on the other side.
And in fact, it caught some of the teams unawares. They really set up for last year's concrete and not what occurred this year. Up at the front, Dario Franchitti leads it. Jan Beekes.
Well, there was a question as to whether he got touched going into the first turn, so I checked with Kim Green, and he said, yes, we were hit from behind by Jimmy Vasser, but we're A-OK. It didn't cause any damage.
Michael Andretti still struggling back in 8th. He fell there from his position inside the second row, Gary.
Well, he's now reporting a big understeer, and that doesn't surprise me. Ed Nathman said just moments before the start, don't be surprised if you see a lot of cars going loose late in the first fuel run before the pit stop. Maybe they set that car expecting that they would go loose early. Right now, big push for Michael.
The biggest conversation in the paddock this morning was, in fact, about tires. That's the greatest worry here, and how long the tires will remain in their best possible adhesion to the racetrack. As a matter of fact, some of the teams think that they will fall off almost totally in 3 laps, but then they may level out. We'll be right back. Back to Toronto's exhibition place in the CART FedEx Championship Series. You ride now with Juan Montoya. Started 8th. Sitting back in 9th right now. Michael Andretti just ahead of him, and Michael, of course, faded back to this position. Just ahead of Michael is Tony Kanaan, and then Greg Moore is lined up just ahead. They're all very close to one another and looking for anything that they can do. Really, at this track, though, there's only 2 places and only one for certain that you absolutely can take the chance on. You can kind of think about it on turn 1. You definitely can think about it at the end of Shoreline.
And what we've seen this year is that as that back straightaway's gotten bumpier and bumpier, the drivers are favoring the right side, which sort of closes off the passing opportunity going down into turn 3. What's going to happen is, if the prediction from Ed Nathman at Newman Haas is correct and these cars start going loose, Michael's going to have to be very patient. But even if the handling comes back to him, Paul, I don't know if there's an opportunity to take advantage of superior handling in a track that is so tight in order to get a pass done.
Tony Kanaan working hard on Greg Moore. As they look back through the field, Kanaan now tries to make his move to the outside.
And that's not really a case of Greg Moore blocking there, Paul. He's just running all the way down the inside. As Tony pulled out, you could see how far that car hopped off the ground over the big bump on the outside, which would be the traditional racing line.
And normally hopping well out there that far is not productive. So Greg Moore still sits in 6th. He's looking pretty good, Jan.
Yes, he is, but they had a big scare before the race. They thought they had broken a header, but it turned out he was running in such a lean position on the pace laps, the car just didn't run right. When he turned it up to the rich mixture that he wanted, the Mercedes is now running the way he wants it to.
Yeah, that could take breath away. Just an hour or so before the start of the race, and you have an engine that is not performing up to snuff. Nice when you can reach up, flick a switch, and change that whole thing. Very tight competition. Franchitti in front. And they are well stacked up from Greg Moore on back through about 12th place. Franchitti, DeFerrin, Vasser. That's the front 3. Gil DeFerrin, the pole sitter. Oh, look at Kanaan, boy. Oh!
Now watch Greg try to come back on the inside of the next corner. He probably won't be able to do it. That's a perfect case where Greg had a lot better exit speed because Tony had washed out wide, locking up the brakes to make the pass, but Greg couldn't use what would normally be a superior exit speed to get the pass remade going into the next corner.
And now Michael Andretti begins to work on Greg Moore as Tony Kanaan, that McDonald's car, begins to pull away.
Tony unloaded off the trailer very, very quick. They said they used the exact same setup as Long Beach. He fell back a little bit in qualifying, but I would expect him to start pulling away now. Michael Andretti better start doing something about Greg Moore because Juan Montoya wants by.
Well, once fast, it looks like Kanaan is able to pull away, Jan.
Yeah, and I was going to say, or add to what Parker is talking about that Long Beach setup. They felt as though they had sort of lost their way on some of the other types of circuits, but they were happy with the setup for Long Beach. And we all know that the key so much on these weekends is to unload fast. Kanaan unloaded fast, and they've only been doing very minor tweaking on that car.
Oh, Franchitti, DeFerrin, Vasser, the top 3. Fittipaldi, Tracy Kanaan. Here's the battle and how Tony Kanaan got inside of Greg Moore. telegraphing to the outside on the previous lap. And Michael Andretti, if Moore hadn't moved to the center of the track, might have been passed as well.
Well, that was a great move by Tony. Like you said, he had set up Greg the lap before on the outside. This time, Greg went to the outside. He went back to the inside, slid the car across the concrete, right up to the concrete wall on the outside. That was very well done and was able to keep that pass going up into the next series of corners.
Rest of the field pretty much nose to tail, but this man, Dario Franchitti, as you can see, running away. That's a 4-second interval back to Gilles de Ferran. Gary Gerald?
Just a quick follow-up on Gilles de Ferran and about that gearbox change. The lack of oil pressure in the primary car in the box this morning resulted in the change, as we mentioned. Just double-checked with Derek Walker. He said so far everything is good. No concerns, so they're off to a comfortable start. They like it.
Greg Moore takes the high line into the corner, and doing so keeps Michael Andretti behind him.
Dario Franchitti was turning the quickest race laps until the last lap, and now Gilles de Ferran has really stepped up the pace. And as we look at Fittipaldi, Tracy Kanaan, and Moore, they're also going very, very quick. Now, one of the things I want to point out, Paul, is our onboard camera sits at 45 inches at height up at the top of the roll hoop. Michael's vision is at about 30 inches, but the concrete walls are at 36 inches. So the difference between these three heights allows our viewers at home to see up and ahead and through the corners. But what's actually happening for Michael is he is below the concrete walls. So for him, he is driving through a concrete tunnel at all times.
Oh, Helio Castroneves, looks like they got a fire burning back in the engine compartment. He's going to climb out as quickly as he can. Well, I was going to say more smoke than fire, and then when they hit it with the extinguisher, it just billowed flame for a second. And Castroneves gets clear of the car. That's somebody off in an area. And it's Michael. Michael Andretti is off.
And that looked like one of the players' cars.
Michael? Engine's dead.
And I would imagine if that was one of the players' cars, it'd have to be Greg Moore, because he and Michael had a heated battle going with Montoya just behind.
Wave your arms or anything, get them over there, push you.
Exactly what it is. Greg Moore, there. This is at turn 3, and that's down at the end of Shoreline. Oh! Michael comes right up under the back end of Greg Moore under braking, and it takes them both off.
And you could see Montoya start to lock it up, saying, thank you for the present, guys. That's what happens in Toronto. You can't be impatient. You have to wait. It's amazing that other than contacting each other, that they avoided hitting the barriers or the tires. They should be able to get these cars restarted and continue the race.
And that's exactly what you said at starting. Now remember, road course rules. Yellow only in that area, so the yellow is going to fly. Michael's complaining that the crews won't come over and get him started, but they have now gone to the full course yellow. There's the twin flags at the line, and out will come the pace car. They'll slow the field down. You wonder, too, no, it's not in the same place. I was wondering if the situation with Castroneves might have put some fluid on the track that also affected them in that corner, and it's an entirely different location on the track. This is how Montoya saw it going down Shoreline.
It looks like Michael got in there really hot. Maybe he expected Greg to go a little deeper. He got underneath the back of Greg's car and literally just lifted it right off the ground. Montoya very cleanly through, thanking for the early Christmas present in 2 positions.
I love that too with Montoya. I'll go over here. No, I'll go over here. No, I'm going to come back over here. Now I'll make the turn. Well, we may have some pit stops coming. And what's the situation on Greg Moore, Jan?
Well, we are going to have some pit stops coming. In fact, Adrian Fernandez is on pit road right now. We expect to see P.J. Jones as well. What is going to happen, or what did happen for Greg Moore? I asked if there was a problem because he was dropping into the clutches of Michael, and they said that's all the speed we have. We just don't quite have the car dialed in. Obviously, Michael put an end to what he hoped would be a better race than it is.
The 2 Patrick cars and the 2 Pac West cars both choose to stop on lap 13. Michael Andretti is out of the car and obviously not pleased with the circumstance, which got Greg Moore restarted and back into competition, but Michael's car is still sitting by the wayside. We'll be back. Who is literally the king of this place in 1989. He scored his first victory at the Molson Indy. 1991, started on the pole and won. 92. With this pass in the first turn, he took the lead and never gave it up. 1994, he took the win, of course, driving for Chip Ganassi. 1995, checkered flag once again. So Michael Andretti, 5 wins here. But today, we're not going to see that. This incident, when he got up underneath the back end of Greg Moore, apparently has done something more to the car than first appearance. He is out of the car and on his way back to the pit area. The car sits by itself down at the end of Shoreline. Carl Haas now has to rely upon the services of his other driver, Christian Fittipaldi, who currently sits 4th. Best move thus far up until this full course yellow is Scott Pruitt, who started 11th and is now up to 8th. Montoya, who started in 8th, has only managed to come 1 position forward to 7th. Tony Kanaan's had a couple of good moves, though.
We've seen some improvements, but you know, it's a place, Paul, as we've said earlier, you've got to be patient. You can't force a pass. I'm a little surprised Michael Andretti's out because it looked like he had picked Greg up with the front wing section. They appear to be intact. There must be some suspension damage that we just couldn't see. I thought both Greg and Michael would just get restarted and continue. Now, of course, that's the case for Greg, but Michael's out.
Parker, we can add from the pits. We understand Michael had a radio conversation. There was a broken ring and possibly some suspension damage, and he was quickly out of the car.
Well, that answers the question.
At first, it sounded like he was trying to get it restarted, and then apparently something was pointed out. Dennis Vitolo driving the 71 car. More often than not, you'll see Luis Garcia Jr. in this car. Vitello is in it for this weekend. Routine stop for them on the 16th lap. Now we're getting fairly close to theoretically when, in fact, other guys may decide to go in for a stop as well. Don't forget, live, 1 o'clock Eastern on the 7th of August, our coverage of Winston Cup and the Brickyard 400 from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You look down on the exhibition place from our Honda Helicam at Toronto, Canada. And Dario Franchitti will be the leader. Is the leader, with DeFerrin behind him, then Vassar, and we'll start the whole thing once again. 16 are complete. This managed to bunch the field a bit, but that had really the biggest significance to the front because Dario Franchitti was running away from second place DeFerrin and had a 4-second advantage over DeFerrin. Again, we look down from the Honda Helicam as they maneuver on to the shoreline, then back. Here's that one of the more critical right-hand turns, though not really a passing area.
I've been interested to see what Montoya was going to try, Paul, because he's made passing areas out of non-passing areas, but so far he hasn't done it.
Green flag comes out again. Franchitti is able to pull away, anticipating that green, gets away from DeFerrin. Kanaan now trying to make a move on Paul Tracy. Comes to the inside of Tracy, and Kanaan grabs a position. Montoya now pulls up behind Tracy. The battle is back here. Franchitti pulls away from DeFerrin. Jimmy Vassar beginning to attack DeFerrin, though.
Watch Montoya behind Paul Tracy. He's got a good run on him.
Montoya moves out to his left. Tracy moves out. Tracy's going to come back on DeFerrin. He can't get it done. He needs to get back inside and protect against Montoya.
We saw some good driving there by Tony Kanaan. He tried to guard the inside. Paul thought he would get him around the outside. Montoya being very patient, which, as I've said, I'm very surprised at. And we've got a car down the escape road.
Shigeaki Hattori has pulled off on one of the escape roads. I think I was talking about DeFerrin, meaning Kanaan, the 44 car. There he is again. And this is where the focus is now. They're beginning to catch up to Christian Fittipaldi. Kanaan's right there behind him.
And I think DeFerrin's breathing a sigh of relief here because, as I've said, it takes a Goodyear's an extra lap to get up to temperature over the Firestones. Even on the restarts, DeFerrin's got a good break in front of Jimmy Vassar right now, so it should give him some breathing room to get up to speed.
And Elio Castroneves, you saw him just before the incident involving Greg Moore and Michael, pulled by the wayside, had a fire in the back of the car. Let's get an update on him.
And let's find out why. Elio, what caused the fire? Do you know?
No, I have no idea. Maybe I had a problem in the gearbox, and I believe it's probably a leak on the gear, so that's why it caused the fire. But man, it looks like everything is I can't finish. I have the lucky lady coin in my pocket, and it's amazing. Well, we have to keep trying.
And he's had just tough luck, guys. They changed an engine just before the race and still have problems.
You know, one of the things that they are going to be worried about pretty quickly here, I would think, is we're beginning to see some buildup of rubber just off a couple of the corners.
And some of these shots, and we've only gone 19 laps in this race, you can see the rubber is starting to get pretty thick offline, which will limit the passing opportunities. We've seen Paul Tracy working the back of Tony Kanaan pretty hard, but as they get down to that main passing section in turn 3, it starts to become a concern. The last lap, we saw Paul actually lock it up on the outside, and the problem is, if you get offline, even with a head of steam like Paul's got now, it's like hitting ice when you go offline, so they've got to be very, very careful. Paul trying to work the inside now on Tony Kanaan.
Paul Tracy comes to the inside, and this time that's going to work for him. Scott Pruitt comes way wide coming off of the corner. Maybe they were anticipating both Scott and Bryan Herta gets in trouble on that same turn 3.
And he was running in 9th position until he made that mistake. You've got to be absolutely consistent here, Paul. It's so easy to go a lap down, especially if you stall the engine. Brian's going to have a hard time getting back into this fight.
One full course caution. That's just come to an end. We're at the 19th lap, 76 to go. Dario Franchitti is the leader of the race. And the kart safety team is going to try to get Bryan Herta restarted. Or at least get him out of harm's way. Here's how Bryan Herta ended up there. And that explains why Scott Pruitt came off the corner so wide. And then we saw Carpentier. It looks like Cristiano D'Amata almost got clipped. But I wondered why Scott was off the corner so far over to the left. And there's the explanation.
Well, it looks like Scott gave him a car width and about 2 inches, which is all he's really required to give him. And it just wasn't quite enough. Brian got in a little too hot. They made contact. Paul and Scott was able to save it and continue.
Well, the yellow flag's flying down at the end of Shoreline at turn 3. The rest of the field comes through. Dario Franchitti is still the leader of the race with Gil de Ferran in second. Al Unser Jr. and Bobby Rahal. And why are these two men hugging? Well, because when he took the green flag today, Al Unser Jr. broke the record of starts that was previously held by Bobby Unser, or by Bobby Rahal. We'll be back after. Views today are courtesy of the Goodyear Blimp Stars and Stripes based in Pompano Beach, Florida. There are currently 6 Goodyear blimps, 3 of them in the U.S., plus a 3-blimp international fleet. Franchitti is still the leader, and Gil de Ferran is second, but Christian Fittipaldi has been on a tear as he came after Jimmy Vasser just seconds ago. Dropped inside and around him, picked up 3rd place.
That was a great pass, and you can see there wasn't very much room there. Jimmy made him fight for it, but Christian should be going off now. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Paul Tracy, there we see him just leaving the screen, is driving a very, very heads-up race, as he has the last few races. He let Tony Kanaan go by. Well, he didn't let him go by, but he didn't get rattled. He then plotted and planned, got back by Tony, driving very, very intelligently with a lot of patience, and that's what it's going to take to do well here. In fact, we've seen Franchitti, de Ferran, Fittipaldi, Vasser, Tracy, Kanaan all drive very careful races, towing young Juan Montoya, who we are now on board with, along with them.
Yeah, it does seem both on and off the track that Paul Tracy is a more confident, more subdued guy. He really seems to be very aware of what's going on, where before it was my racing, I've got to get in the zone. Now you talk to him, there's a lot of other things that he brings up and that are seemingly important to them. So maybe he's reached a plateau in his life in which we're going to see it change. Certainly we're seeing something happening on the racetrack, and I think it's for the good.
And Tony Sekeli, his engineer, I think is part of that reason, Paul. He's by profession was a school teacher. He's one of the best engineers in the business, and I think that's the calming force that Paul's needed to get him focused and on the right track.
That little excursion off course for Bryan Herta cost him 2 laps, Jan Beekes.
Yes, it did. It took him 2 laps to get Bryan Herta restarted. Bobby Rahal, your take on what you saw in the replay of that accident?
I think he was just trying to outbrake Pruitt, and Pruitt maybe pinched him a little bit, and it looks like he just locked up the rear brakes and just got sideways on him. Just unfortunately we couldn't keep the engine running because it would have cost us, but certainly not 2 laps.
At 2 laps back, you're obviously going to stay in, but it really takes a lot of attrition now to try and maybe get some points.
Yeah, all we can do is run as hard as we can and just hope for the best.
Thanks, Bobby.
In anticipation of pit stops, a lead spreading out just a little bit as we anticipate the stops. Franchitti is 4.5 seconds on Fittipaldi. You're riding with Adrian Fernandez, who has been moving steadily forward. We had told you at starting that he had some problems in both practice and qualifying, but now he seems to have the car under and has moved up to 13th. Michael Andretti, though, on the other hand, is out going to try to come out. We're going to hold just a second, Gary, and see if Adrian can get past Cristiano Damata. And in fact, he does down in turn 3. So Adrian Fernandez moves up now into 12th place. But Michael Andretti, unfortunately, is out and is with Gary.
Michael, was this a case of impatience? Was it a mistake?
Not totally. I mean, I think I had a bit of a run on him, and then I saw I wasn't going to get him, but I already was in the braking zone, and he crossed line, and when he went across, it took the air off my rear wing, and I just locked my rear brakes. I couldn't stop, and it just it was a shame. You know, it's very similar to what Adrian did to me, last week at Elkhart Lake. It was a racing accident. It just, nothing I could do to avoid it.
Did you have the car? Did you have the car that was capable of winning this for a 6th time today?
No, I don't think I did. The car wasn't very good today. It started out very understeery, and then it started to get very loose. So it wasn't the ideal car today.
Did you have suspension damage? Is that why you had to get out of it?
No, I was a little disappointed. I was hoping we could get going again, but they said that my front wing was on the ground and they weren't going to restart me, but I probably could have restarted.
In terms of the championship, is this a crippling blow?
It hurts. It's not crippling. I mean, there's still many races to go, but it doesn't help at all. We'll have to see what happens with the results today.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks.
If you've been watching, Paul Tracy's just been flying on the turn 3 area. He made this move on Jimmy Vasser. Jimmy saw him coming there. And with that, then Paul Tracy's able to move up into 4th place. But now Jimmy's got a lot of other folks to worry about. Adrian Fernandez, we mentioned that he's moving forward. Here he is again making a move. Jan Bikus.
Well, remember, Paul, he has fresh tires because he and his teammate P.J. Jones pitted on lap 13. They also changed the tire pressure 1 pound to try and give him a little more grip. But the funny thing was, they didn't actually want him to come in on lap 13. The radio wasn't working.
Excuse me, Jan. And we've got 2 cars sitting side by side in the corner. Richie Hearn has won. Cristiano Damata.
Into the wall.
They were racing with one another. Actually, at the time, it was a battle for 13th. Apparently, it got a little too heated. All the fans, come on over with your camera to the edge of the fence. Safety crew is there. Yellow only in this area at the moment. And Jimmy Vasser has called in and said that he needs to pit because he's losing his rears.
And you would think he would try to delay this in case they go full course yellow so he doesn't come in under a green condition.
So Jimmy Vasser on the way in. There he is, Gary.
We'll take a look now as they go to work to change, and obviously they'll fuel. We think they're also going to make a change on the front wing. There is the change, both sides. A couple of turns, a couple more on the left-hand side. Just under 13 seconds, he's out of here.
And just as he comes out, the flags come out for a full course yellow. Now, the assumption is that Jimmy felt he had no choice at all, but that could hurt big time. And there is why we're under yellow. We're going to look at how they got there.
Coming down the pit straightaway, Cristiano Damata just in front of Richie Hearn. Oh, Paul, he didn't have it at all. Cristiano was turning in for the corner, and he got speared by Richie Hearn.
Dario comes in. Jan Bikus is there.
And he comes in for his first service of the day. We will check to see if they go for any changes. Currently nothing. Oh, there was one of the front wings. They went 1 turn.
1 turn on the right front. Christian Fittipaldi is in.
Watching DeFerrin as well, Paul. He's gone. Christian Fittipaldi right behind him. We'll see if he beats everybody else out. He does.
So Gil DeFerrin stops, as does Christian Fittipaldi. There is DeFerrin. Looks like they were able to push Richie Hearn away, but it doesn't look like they were able to get Cristiano Damata restarted just yet. Again, this is what caused this second full course caution of the day.
I would imagine there'll be some words between those 2 drivers. You've got to get up at least halfway along the side of the guy, because when you spear him with the front of your car into the right rear tire, that's not good for driver relations.
You got a glimpse of Richie Hearn, who has restarted and is lined up directly behind the pace car. We'll be back with more from Toronto. Course caution, this Toyota Spotlight focuses on the leader of the race, Dario Franchitti, who in 1997 started on the pole, but on the very first lap got in trouble and his day was over. Then in 1998, he was leading the race and spun. But Dario Franchitti is today looking for a victory, and he made the early move to get the pole sitter Gil de Ferran aside, picked up the lead, and hasn't been headed since then. Back at the back of the field, yes, back at the very back, Juan Montoya. Now he's back here because the officials moved him back. This is a pit violation. Watch the hose in the pit ahead of him. He comes out, runs the right front over that hose, and as a result, they put him to the back of the field.
The argument is that the hose was thrown in front of him, therefore he shouldn't be penalized, but the hose was clearly in the pit box of the car in front. He should have still made a hard left-hand turn there to come out of his box cleanly, so they've moved him all the way to the back of the field. On these pit stops, here's the in and the out, with de Ferran suffering one position, but Fittipaldi, Tracy, and Montoya suffering even more. And of course, Montoya well into the back now. That stop cost him in more than one way. So the field now anticipating the green. Remember how Montoya, or how Franchitti was able to get a good jump on the field last time. Let's see if he can do that on second place, Roberto Moreno. Remember, Roberto is pitted out of sequence. He pitted early. Both PacWest cars did. And as we watch this restart, I don't think I have ever seen the tire rubber flying off the track surface with the marbles so deep ever on the straightaways. Occasionally we'll get these low shots. You can see how deep the marbles are on the outside of the track, but even down the straightaway now, Paul, it's being flung up into the air. It's going to make it very, very difficult to pass. P.J. Jones down into turn 3. Mauricio Gugelmin just ahead of him. Franchitti, Moreno, de Ferran, Gugelmin. That's your top 4. Oh, he swung really wide going through that corner. And Greg Moore with a problem again. A spin, doesn't look like he touched anyone. Again, this is turn 3. And I'm wondering, Paul, as many laps as they did under the caution, if they get any heat into these tires and go offline to scrub the tires, they pick up all this tire marbles offline, and then instead of driving on your tires, you're driving on top of something that's not your rubber. And you can see Al Jr., wow! And Greg Moore, once again, Greg Moore on the throttle, but it looks like he stalled it this time. Yeah, I'm wondering more about just getting offline and getting into the marbles. It's hard to tell there. I mean, obviously, Al was down the inside of him. Greg came back to take the line. You can see it there, Paul, being thrown up into the air. And when you're not running on the rubber that was initially designed into the tire, it's very, very difficult to control the car. Hearn and D'Amata in contact. Hearn gets back into the race. Cristiano D'Amata is out, Gary.
Yes, indeed. He's back at his pit box now. Cristiano, what happened, and how risky of a move did you think it was on Hearn's part?
He wasn't close enough to me to try to make the move, but again, he made the bad decision.
You're very unhappy, obviously. Will you talk to him?
No, I think there's nothing to be talked. He knows what he did. If he wants, he has to come to me and talk, you know.
All right. Well, there you get the story from Cristiano. He manages a smile, guys, but believe me, he's smoking still.
Oh, that's one angry young man. And with Greg Moore sitting out in a precarious position on the course, they've gone to full course yellow once again. 36 laps are complete. Dario Franchitti is still the leader. Fittipaldi, as he acknowledged the crowd here, but look at the hat. Well, if you know the Chief Steward Wally Dallenbach, then you know that that's Wally's hat. And now it's Christian's. It stems back to a bet made in 1995. Wally said he'd give him his hat. First time that he wins a race. He turned the hat over at the drivers' meeting. In this field, most starts without a win, remembering that Roberto Moreno, stopping out of sequence, is now sitting second behind Dario Franchitti as we anticipate going back to the green flag. Pace comes up, green flag in the hand of Jensen Twell, the starter.
Green.
Here we go again. Down toward the Princess Gate. Franchitti got a jump the first time we had a restart. He's not been able to replicate that. Paul Tracy working on Christian Fittipaldi. Again, take note of the rubber line just off of the line. Watch Tracy. He's got a good run on Christian Fittipaldi. Tracy's tucked right in there. Tries the outside. And And in fact, now I thought for a moment there that Fittipaldi was going to get caught behind P.J. Jones running in 5th. Jimmy Vasser is pulled off the line, and he has a flat tire. He's going to head for the pits. Well, Jimmy Vasser, whose day started so well, took this green flag in 12th place on this restart, but already he has trouble.
And he's had such a great weekend. It's really the first time since Milwaukee that things have been going Jimmy's way. He's had a very uncharacteristic long road of bad luck and a couple of mechanical failures. He had it all together this weekend, qualified 4th. I thought he was potentially one of the winners this weekend, and yet things have gone wrong once again for Jimmy Vasser. Gary Gerould?
Jimmy apparently reported, Paul, that he thought a tire was flat and going down. The crew asked him, are you sure? Because the telemetry indicated that the pressure was up. Apparently, however, he has made it. Now here he comes onto pit road, and the service will begin. I'm not sure which tire was going down. Of course, they'll change all 4. Quick top off of fuel. Just been in here and had that tough luck when the full course yellow. They're holding him, double checking on something. They're looking under the suspension and under the rear wing.
Rear suspension.
Got a rear suspension problem. Maybe it wasn't a tire going down at all. They waved him out.
Well, so they send Jimmy back into the fight after looking and apparently seeing something at the back end.
I'm curious, Paul. The first street race I did in 1993, after a restart, I called in because I thought I had cut a rear tire. It turns out it was tire pickup. Michael Andretti did the same thing, and I had felt that a few other times during the course of the races that I had run on the streets, and it can catch you off guard because it feels just like a flat if you collect enough rubber more on one tire than on another tire as you're trying to scrub those tires coming back up to speed. And I'm curious to know whether that might be the problem that Jimmy Vasser has, if it's something that hasn't gone wrong in the rear suspension.
Now, as we watch Gil de Ferran, who runs in 3rd, by the way, Richie Hearn is not in that fight. Now Moreno finally gets around him, though he separated the leader in 2nd place for a while. But noting de Ferran, there was some confusion last week when it was reported that Valvoline was leaving the sponsorship of auto racing on our show. They are not leaving auto racing. They're only not going to sponsor cars in open wheel racing, and that leaves Derek Walker still in the need of a major sponsor for next year. Both of his cars looking well today. De Ferran sits in 3rd, though he started up on the pole in front, but his teammate Nemo Gidley has got a good run going as well.
He's run up as high as 10th. There's been some reshuffling because there are people out of order in the pit stops. He's back now into 18th, but legitimately he had worked his way into the top 10, which is a great move for this rookie driver.
Back to the pits and Gary Gerould.
Paul, I want to give you a quick look at tire buildup. Parker was talking about it. This is in Jimmy Vasser's pit. Look at the wheels and look at all of the rubber that has built up on this set of tires that came off on the first run. We also got to look at the tires that just came off in that quick stop, and even though he only had a couple of laps out there, I was amazed at how much rubber had been built up. Obviously, when there's that much there, it would feel like a vibration or a problem, and let's hope that Jimmy Vasser's woes are over.
That's exactly what I was talking about. He's running on everybody else's rubber that's been flung off the tires. It makes the car very nervous, very skaty, to the point where it feels like something's broken or a tire's been cut. That's exactly the experience that I've had in the past, and you just have to get through it. That's why a lot of times on these restarts, Paul, when we go to the onboards, you can hear the drivers doing burnouts. It's a trick that Bobby Rahal taught me years ago. So before you go green, you do a number of big top fuel drag burnouts before coming back to green to get all that off the tires.
There's Roberto Moreno. He runs in 2nd place, 2.5 seconds behind the leader. But remember, he's out of sequence, Jan Vikas.
Yes, he is, and that's what put him into 2nd spot. But for Pac West, both Moreno and Mauricio Gugelmin, they are saying at the moment, right now, they are very close to making it to the end of the race with just one more stop. They need a little bit of help. A couple more laps of yellow sometime during the race might put them exactly where they need to be. It's close, and they said they were getting 6 miles per gallon under the yellow, which is awesome.
Well, and speaking of strategy, Juan Montoya stopped during that last full course caution, not once, but twice. They figured he was back at the back anyway. They brought him back in. They fueled him up. They sent him out with fresh tires, and who knows what strategy is at play there. We'll be back. Speedway. for coverage of the U.S. 500 of the CART FedEx Championship Series. We'll all start up early in the morning with the CART Today coverage at 11:30 and the race itself on ABC Sports at 1:30 Eastern. Well, past couple laps, Chip Ganassi has been more than a little animated in talking with CART officials. And what is he upset about? Well, Montoya chasing Max Pappas.
I guess the question is, Paul, can you fit a Renard down into a hole that small?
Another look at the same thing.
Look how little room there is on the left side of your screen for Juan to try to get by the inside of Max Pappas. The problem is that blocking, or is that where the drivers have been driving? I think it's a little bit of both, but Montoya now, since that incident, has locked up especially his inside wheels going into the corners, trying to get around Max Pappas. He just can't seem to get it done. Looks like Juan's a little better coming off the corners, has a little bit better drivability, but at the end of the straightaway, Max's Cosworth is able to pull a little bit.
Call him on it. Just be careful. They're going to.
So Chip Ganassi saying to Juan Montoya that they're going to call.
Doing it anyway.
On the passing and the blocking. So let's see where this goes, Gary.
Chip Ganassi has been constantly lobbying CART officials. There are two of them down here in front of him. He keeps pointing to the monitors. He keeps telling them, you can see it here repeatedly. And finally, it looks like he's won the battle, if that radio conversation we just heard is correct.
The difficult thing for Chief Stewart and Wally Dallenbach to determine is going down that long straightaway into the prime passing area of turn 3. The drivers do favor the inside. It's a lot smoother there. The cars don't bottom going down the right side. Is that blocking or the driver's line? I think that's a tough call at best.
In the pits, you notice for a second the official with the black helmet. There he is. That's Dennis Swan. Kind of keeps track of everything up and down the pit area. They are now everyone required to wear a helmet in the pits, officials as well. Franchitti is still the leader. Moreno is in second place. But look at Adrian Fernandez at the back of this lineup. Adrian has steadily been working his way forward. He now sits 9th behind Tony Kanaan, but he's very definitely in this fight, and from time to time has been one of the faster cars on the circuit.
It's amazing. We knew that he unloaded very quick. He was in the top 3, the top 4 in the Friday and Saturday practice sessions. Both qualifying sessions, he had something go wrong with his primary car on Friday. Saturday, they brought the backup car. It had a problem right away. We knew he would be one of the drivers moving up, and now he's in 9th place. Montoya in 12th place. We knew these guys would move up, but Adrian, having won here just a few years ago for his first CART victory, is on a charge once again.
Now, we mentioned that he did stop along with his teammate, P.J. Jones, who's currently 5th, and there he is. They stopped out of sequence, but then during the second full course caution, Adrian got back into the sequence. Jan Beekes?
Yes, and for P.J. Jones, he will be here on pit road in 2 laps, so he is still on the initial sequence. Like you say, Adrian Fernandez is not.
And Adrian Fernandez, well, he got around, so Fernandez carves off another position, comes forward. The front is still Franchitti, Moreno, DeFerrin. Well, now here's a report you don't want to hear. A couple places on the track, a few umbrellas have gone up. We had just light sprinkles during qualifying yesterday. We apparently have it today as well. Remember, we're right on the edge of Lake Ontario. It's just a few hundred yards off of the long back straightaway here, and some of the teams are thinking about this. The rain tires may be coming out. We'll be back. Pits out of sequence. Here comes P.J. Jones. Jan?
Yes, and of course he pitted on lap 13, and they say that right now this is not enough to make it to the end. They need 6 more laps of yellow. The other guy is the Pac West team that pitted on the same lap. They might be here in about 3.
The engine, of course, it sounds rough because they have a special button that keeps them from breaking the speed limit until they get right there, and then he can light it up. Franchitti is still the leader. Roberto Moreno in second place, but he's 8.5, almost 9 seconds back. So Franchitti is running away with this race. Robbie Gordon, he had some problems. You see him as he just headed into turn 1 with Franchitti now making the corner at turn 1. dropped back a bit, but has remained out. So Robbie Gordon is still in competition, though he is the last of the cars on the lead lap, running in 19th. After 56 laps, the dominance of Franchitti shows, and the average at 102 miles an hour. These cars out of the race. And an unfortunate out, especially for Michael Andretti, who will lose incredibly valuable points after moving well up in the points last week at Road America. Roberto Moreno and Richie Hearn, of course, behind him. Hearn is 3 laps off of the pace. Roberto Moreno still substituting for Mark Blundell, who everyone hopes is back in the car soon. But at the same time, they are hoping that Roberto Moreno may come up with a good ride. Perhaps PacWest adds a 3rd car for the remainder of the season, or perhaps something else somewhere. But here is Roberto Moreno out of 2nd place. Jan Vickers waits.
Yes, and both the PacWest cars will be in here at the same time. We're shooting from Mauricio Gugelmin's pit, so we should see both of the cars come in. Here comes Mauricio. Telling him to reset. And there's a break between the 2 pits, so it should be easy for Moreno to pull it out.
What's your speed going
That's
on?
13.8. Now let's watch his teammate. The fuel's in. And I think a little bit quicker for Gugelmin, but of course they remain in the same positions.
And so with that stop, Gil de Ferran, the pole sitter, will move up into 2nd place, but he's a long way back, 11.2 seconds back from the leader, Franchitti. Christian Fittipaldi is another 6 seconds back behind de Ferran, so the front of the field pretty stretched out at this point, but still one more fuel stop to come. That could in fact make a difference.
P.J. Jones pitting a few laps ago has really opened up the battle between Christian Fittipaldi, Paul Tracy, Adrian Fernandez, and Tony Kanaan. Right now, Christian and Paul are the 2 fastest cars on the track by nearly a half a second. Dario Franchitti running about 6/10 behind them. A nice pace, a nice consistent pace. He certainly doesn't want to get into the same trap of last year of building an enormous lead and then having it thrown away. He's probably conserving the brakes just a little bit, the tires just a little bit, still hustling the car hard. But as we watch these camera angles, watch how thick the tire rubber is offline, and he certainly doesn't want to have a miscue that puts him off into these tire marbles.
Well, we are at the 58th lap. You're on board with Adrian Fernandez, who is now up to 5th. Want to push you ahead and take a look at what we think, what the best guess is, when the leaders of the race now will be coming back into the pits. And the guess is that it's going to occur at about the 68th lap for Franchitti, de Ferran, Fittipaldi, and Tracy. Looks to be a very busy pit area with them all in at the same time. Now we're going to take you back to Adrian Fernandez. He rides in 5th place. We're just going to ride with him for a while. Into turn 1 and down the long straight onto Shoreline, heading for 3. Catches the wall. Did you catch that? Who did he say hit him?
I was trying to make that out. It sounds like he had help.
Jourdain. Yeah, Jourdain hit him, according to Montoya. And both of those cars are damaged. Both are out. Local yellows fly there. We'll see if they go to full course. Here's what happened.
Going down into turn number 3, side by side, plenty of room for both cars as they come up to the left-hander. Wow, did you see the back of Jourdain's car snap to the left as he made that transition? Montoya down the inside, Jourdain giving him room. The cars side by side through here. Didn't give him a lot of room. As they come up the hill, well, I don't know, Paul. It doesn't look like Montoya gave him enough room coming back through the left-hander. It's a little hard to tell there. We know that Jourdain's car stepped out on the left-hander, turn number 4.
Gave him plenty of room there.
But does
the back end's going to jump out there?
But did you see the contact?
Yeah, on the wall.
Right there on the left side of Jourdain's car.
So with this full course yellow now, into the pits comes the leader, Jan Beekes.
Yes, and they're not expecting to make any changes for Dario Franchitti. This car has been so quick, they're just hoping that this pit stop goes nice and smoothly with no problems. The tires are on, that's the trickiest part. And he's out of here in about 12 seconds flat, exactly what they wanted.
And so Franchitti's made his stop. Gil de Ferran and Gary.
Yes, indeed, and right in front of him, Christian Fittipaldi came in. They were telling Christian he's doing a great job, the fastest car on the track. Let's see if he can beat de Ferran out. It's going to be awful close. Here comes one of the cool cars, Paul Tracy. 3 of them. Oh, wow, good stuff. But they all avoided each other.
Oh, but only by a slight margin. It sure looks like there was some contact there. We'll check on de Ferran and both Christian, but Paul Tracy, who was coming down the pits from the far left side, he was pitted well up the pit, came into position and grabbed it. Got out ahead of Christian.
And that's where that teamwork element is so important. We focus so much on the drivers, but without the guys in the pits, they can win the race for you, they can lose the race for you.
Jimmy Vasser's in the pits.
Yes, and they are going for a fresh set of tires as well. And that was very, very quick for Jimmy Vasser. But of course, he's way behind those guys up front.
Yep. Jimmy Vasser came into the pits running in 16th after good qualifying, a good start, but a race that has not gone well for him. His teammate, of course, Montoya, if they were on any kind of a different strategy, well, it has not worked out when Montoya got against the wall after contact with Michel Jourdain. And here they are coming out. There's de Ferran on the roll. Look at the Newman Haas guys clear the pit lane. The tire jumped in the air there. So if he hit that tire and the tire was in the box.
Oh, he got it, Paul.
Looks like a flag to me.
Yep.
So Gil de Ferran may have himself a problem that will bring him back into the pit. Rain has not reappeared. Just a sprinkle came through, and the rain has now gone away. We'll be back with more after this. In Toronto, our thanks to these aerial shots of the pilots and crew of the Goodyear Blimp Stars and Stripes. Next year, watch for the newest Goodyear blimp in the fleet to be based in Sydney, Australia. Floats up over Lake Ontario. Now, this is Gil de Ferran when he came out from his last stop. Look at his right rear. He catches one of Christian Fittipaldi's tires that had just been taken off the car. And as a result of that, the officials have told the crew, move him to the last place in the line, and that's where he is now. Franchitti takes the green flag, the restart underway. Look in second place, Patrick Carpentier, but he's out of sequence. Look at Paul Tracy coming inside. Carpentier, they bump, move out toward the wall, but Tracy does get past.
And now Christian Fittipaldi's got a huge amount of steam with Roberto Moreno and also Tony Kanaan in tow. Look for him down the inside of Patrick Carpentier. Great move by Paul Tracy.
And that is race order as Christian Fittipaldi tries to get inside of Carpentier. And Wiggles coming off the corner. Couldn't tell if there was a touch or not. Now here is Roberto Moreno working on Carpentier. So the rest of the race order now trying to get around Patrick Carpentier, who did stop out of order. Was hoping to play a little strategic game of his own. Moreno now tries the move. Oh, it's tight here, but Moreno gets it done. Kanaan tries to get it done too. He goes right, then left.
Remember the problem here, the rest of these drivers have fresh tires. Carpentier remained out. He's got a lot of pickup on his tires. You can see the car moving all over the racetrack there, Paul. He's trying to get grip, and now look at Max Pappas coming down the inside.
Max Pappas comes alongside Kanaan. You know, I've lost track of Michael Andretti, or excuse me, of Christian Fittipaldi in all of this. I'm gonna look for Christian. I didn't see him in the order in 2 different places. Here comes Pappas. Kanaan.
Whoa, Kanaan
lights the brakes big time.
Oh, he's got a rough ride now, Paul. He flat spotted those fronts badly.
Pappas comes back at Kanaan. Kanaan still riding right there. Then the rest of the group, Fernandez, Pruitt, Guzman, all right behind.
And to give you an idea of how much this group is struggling, that last lap, Franchitti was almost 2 seconds a lap quicker than the rest of the field. Carpentier hanging on for dear life, trying to get these tires cleaned off.
And Christian Fittipaldi is still up at the front. They just kind of cut around him. We saw a dark car at the edge of the course. The coverage again coming from CBC, but he did cross the line in third place behind Franchitti and Paul Tracy. Fernandez is 8th. Complete. Down through the gears to turn 3. Oh, and this time it's P.J. Jones lighting the brakes, but look, it has Greg Moore with some smoke and vapor at the back end of the car, pulls off, and DeFerrin is in trouble. Carpentier was 5th when he pulled off. DeFerrin, of course, sent all the way to the back and was trying to work his way forward.
And I think we saw some smoke at the back of Carpentier's car as he pulled off there in turn 3. Yep, there it is. He had it well under control. It wasn't a matter of just missing the braking and turn-in area.
But here's the guy that's really suffering. He wants a push, wants to get going. I've got a guess on DeFerrin that he was just trying to get his way through traffic, and maybe somebody didn't realize how fast a car was behind all of them.
And he's about ready to go a lap down. This is what he doesn't want. And they've decided to push him down the runoff area rather than trying to bump start him there.
The yellow and red flag, course conditions flag for the Greg Moore situation coming into that corner.
Now we can see Carpentier here. He's just going to pull straight off. But there's Gilles DeFerrin rotating and spinning down the wall. You can see the pieces flying off the rear wing. That might explain why they've decided to just push him down the runoff area.
And what may have put him there as we go to full course caution again to spray off of Moore's car, and he just happened to be the guy that ended up with it. Jan Beekes.
For Greg Moore, it was an engine failure, so the smoke from the back was related to the Mercedes power plant. They don't know exactly what failed. He's out. Patrick Carpentier, they're laying out tires. They expect him here on pit road.
Carpentier, of course, that had that problem. We'll have to see what's going to happen over there. Carpentier was the one that had the one. Well, both cars have an issue. Dario Franchitti, though, and his teammate, they run 1 and 2. Play still under the full course caution as a result of all the oil dropped on the course. The view from the Honda Helicam, and here's how the oil got there. Of course, we're talking Greg Moore's car is just ahead, and this is how Richie Hearn saw it. You see that big, wide line of oil that was laid down on the left of the car, and that's what caught Gilles DeFerrin out.
It sure did, and there's nothing you can do. Hard braking from 185 miles an hour. You hit a skating rink, and you're around. I'm surprised he didn't sustain more damage than he did.
And so Gilles DeFerrin is retired from this race as we're ready to go back to the green flag. We are green flag racing again. 75 laps complete. 95 the scheduled distance. The team green cars run 1 and 2. Franchitti and then Tracy. And Fernandez makes just a nice little move, taking away 6th place from Tony Kanaan as they headed into turn 1. That's oil dry that they had to put down on the large quantity of oil that was laid down on the course. Ellenser Jr. out there running on it. Doesn't seem to bother him.
I'm surprised to see Fernandez and Al out in the kitty dry out there with their left tires, because even though they sweep it off, it still doesn't have the adhesion that the rest of the drivers are getting just on the inside of it. And look at the marbles on the outside, Paul. They're getting deeper and deeper.
Here is Adrian Fernandez as they headed into turn 1. Just darted inside of Tony Kanaan, took the position away.
From 23rd to 6th place, that's not a bad day, all things considered.
And I hesitate to remind you, but I will. First and second, team green cars. Oh, you want to remember St. Louis? You want to remember Houston? Well, we'll see how it goes this time, though we have mentioned that Paul Tracy seems to be a lot brighter about those kind of conflicts now. And at Milwaukee, there was a conversation between the two and the team owner, Barry Green, about how they will deal with just this situation.
And Adrian goes back out there again. He and Al are the only two drivers. Everyone else is staying to the inside. But as you said, Team Green's never finished 1 and 2. Will this be the day with a Canadian driver on the podium?
And of course, the danger is that first and second members of the same team, both aggressive drivers, will get to racing one another and then get into one another. And, well, that would give Christian Fittipaldi the lead should that happen. Now, Juan Montoya also out of the race. This is second DNF in a row. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Juan Montoya has made his way back to pit road 1. What happened?
I don't know. It's been a tough race, you know. I think Target Hunt and Firestone did a great job. When I came out of the pits, I think I hit a hose from Kanan's car, but I think the hose was outside the pit, you know, was outside his area, because when I left, I looked at that. I saw the hose of it, but I didn't have anywhere to go. So they put us in the back and they shouldn't. And then, you know, the same driver is briefing about blocking and all that, and, you know, they're very inconsistent with everything. Car has always been like that, and it's tough race like that, you know. I'm coming from the back. I tried to pass him in the inside. He nearly put me in the wall. Then I'm going around the outside. He's trying to put me in the wall in the outside. I don't know what he's playing at.
So you're talking about Jourdain, because you had trouble with Pappas as well.
No, that was with Pappas. Jourdain was okay, you know. Put the car in the inside. When I look in the mirror, I didn't saw him, so I turned. And I didn't know he was there.
Tough day.
Okay, thanks.
When you were on board with P.J. Jones running 11th, you saw some very close competition. Franchitti, Tracy Fittipaldi, Roberto Moreno is in 4th, then Max Pappas and Adrian Fernandez.
P.J. Jones making a great move on the outside of Brian Herta, coming up 3 and 4, the same place where we saw Jourdain and Montoya have trouble. And now we've got Memo Gidley looking all over the back of Brian Herta. Some great racing here in the final stages. And Paul, I'm surprised, because as deep as the marbles have gotten, I wouldn't think that you'd be able to run that far offline and still have the sort of traction necessary to make a pass stick.
Keeping track of that championship, too. Given all of the individuals that are out, names like Andretti and Montoya, that's going to change the entire championship complexion broadly. Montoya can leave here still with a lead, but Franchitti, Fittipaldi, they're going to move up. We'll be back. Now looks on Canadian Greg Moore, who has not had a very pretty day. Tangled with Michael Andretti, tagged with Al Unser Jr., and then finally the engine let go, and that ended his race. Our aerial views today, courtesy of the Goodyear Blimp Stars and Stripes, based in Pompano Beach, Florida. There are currently 6 Goodyear Blimps, 3 in the United States and 3 in the international fleet. Dario Franchitti is still the leader by 2.8 seconds over his teammate Paul Tracy. Christian Fittipaldi is in 3rd place, followed by Moreno and Max Pappas. This is Al Unser Jr. over to the right of P.J. Jones, and that'll mark your car. Al Unser Jr., though, for starting way, way back in 21st, having a pretty good day. He now runs in 10th. Going to be some changes, not changes, but additions to that team next week. For the U.S. 500, Alex Barron, who you may remember was driving for Dan Gurney at the start of the season and has been replaced at Gurney by Walter Salles, will be in a Penske next week at the U.S. 500. He had 2 great practice sessions. In fact, we understand going to be both Penske cars back instead of the Lola when they come back to Michigan, but we'll see how that actually works out. Jan Beekes.
Well, Barry Green makes the calls for Paul Tracy. We understand there was a radio communication. You're telling Paul to stay where he is. What's your team strategy?
Well, Paul's got a difficult job. You know, he's got the fight behind him, and then he's got to protect the back door. I think Dario's a little quicker than he has been all day, but we're going to try and stay in this formation. Paul's busy right now. Christian's pretty close to him, too close for my comfort. With still 7 laps to go, so a lot of racing left yet.
And a very, very nervous Barry Green. Thank you.
There comes Franchitti. There comes his teammate Tracy, and Christian Fittipaldi. Not as close as he could be, but he is indeed there. Roberto Moreno stays in the fight in 4th place behind Fittipaldi, and Max Pappas is 5th. Some considerable interval. 4.5 seconds from Fittipaldi back to Roberto Moreno. So team orders out to Barry Green's cars. You don't normally hear that in this series. Jimmy Vasser and P.J. Jones, they've been back and forth at it for some time now. Vassar was able to get around Gidley, and since then has been locked onto the back end of P.J. Jones's car in a fight for 11th place.
It's been a great battle with Al Jr., P.J. Jones, Jimmy Vassar, Gidley, and Patrick Carpentier. Once P.J. made contact with Al started pedaling a little bit harder. We could see him just out of the picture there, locking up that inside front wheel. And now Jimmy Vassar, who you remember had to go back with that extra pit stop he did for that tire change, has been steadily working his way through the field, now with his sights on P.J. Jones. Mimo Gidley has been doing a great job. Patrick Carpentier trying to figure out how to get by him, but Mimo's been showing great speed this entire weekend. 15 cars on the lead lap. Christian Fittipaldi runs in third. If something goes wrong with Team Green, he can inherit the lead, score 2 in a row, scoring his first win just a week ago. And when you talk about Christian Fittipaldi, you have to remember he does particularly well when racing outside of the United States. And watching P.J. Jones and Jimmy Vassar, P.J.'s got to be very careful here, Paul, that he makes sure that he takes his line and doesn't react to any move that Jimmy makes. Otherwise, we'll know that Chip Ganassi will be all over the kart officials calling for blocking once again. Now there's Christian Fittipaldi, 4.5 seconds behind the leader, Dario Franchitti. Paul Tracy sits in second and is ordered to protect the back door. Will he? We'll find out. 89 laps complete. P.J. Jones and Jimmy Vassar. Jimmy finally has been behind P.J. for quite some time. Finally just gutted the car down to the inside. Tony Kanaan's in trouble. Tony Kanaan, who was running 8. He must have made heavy contact with the outside wall to flatten both the right front and the right rear tires there. Off the line of the course, and they do have the course condition flag showing there. And I think you could see debris on the exit of that fast turn 11 that leads onto the pit straight just at the top of the screen before we cut back to the car there, Paul. So this is right at pit exit. Second place, Tracy, with Fittipaldi behind him. And right now they are only on local yellow there. You can see the yellow flags waving up the course. And you can see him really pinch off the exit of the corner right at the top of the screen. I think there's still some parts off Tony's car laying out in the racing line there as they come off that last corner. We did want to tell you with that move, as here is Mauricio Gugelmin off in one of the runoffs. He was running 9. That with that pass of Jones, Jimmy Vassar moved into 11th. Roberto Moreno, the teammate to Mauricio Gugelmin, is in 4th place. He's been higher, up in 2nd at one point, but he's been on an entirely different fuel strategy. Jan Bikas, can he run to the end?
He sure can, Paul. They said they had plenty of yellow. It's not a problem. He will make it to the end, and obviously they're pretty pleased with themselves with the strategy they tried today.
Franchitti, then Tracy. In 3rd place is Fittipaldi. And with Tony Kanaan off the edge of the track at pit out, Gary Gerould, can you update it?
Yeah, we talked with him as he was headed back toward the pits. He just said a tire blew. I don't know if it was the front or the rear, but both of them clearly were down on that right-hand side. And boy, I'm still somewhat surprised that that car sets there at the end of pit road the way it does. And they're letting him finish this thing up. White flag.
White flag comes out to the leader, Dario Franchitti. Dario and Paul Tracy have never finished 1 and 2. They may just do it now. Christian Fittipaldi does not appear to be in attack position for Paul Tracy. In fact, Paul seems to be moving a little bit forward. Maybe they're going to try and get a nice formation when they cross the line. Dario Franchitti, should he win it, will be the 8th different winner this year as he works on his final lap. Tracy crossed the line 2.7 seconds behind last time around. Be Franchitti, then Tracy, Fittipaldi, Moreno, Pappas, and Fernandez. Those are the top 6 as they came to this final lap. Last driver to lead all of the laps. Yep, Dario Franchitti, Houston last year.
Great job, mate. Awesome job. 1-2. Wonderful. 1-2.
And Team Green has done it. Team Green finishes 1st and 2nd, Franchitti, and then Paul Tracy. Christian Fittipaldi comes across in 3rd, followed by Moreno, Pappas, and Fernandez. Here are the unofficial results with Dario Franchitti leading all the laps, winning the race. A couple of notable moves from 25th to 9th in his 265th and record-breaking start. Al Unser Jr. Adrian Fernandez from 23rd to 6th. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
And the presentation of another magnificent trophy. This one is special for Dario Franchitti because it's the first this year How tough was it to be patient, not make the mistake that cost you this race last year?
I was patient all day. Don kept saying, you know, keep the margins, keep it safe, and I was doing that all day, and we were still quick enough. So, I mean, the guys did a great job. The guys at Team Cogreen, absolutely fantastic stops. Don Halliday and Tony Sekeli and other guys in the engineering department, they did a great job as well. The car was awesome all day, and it's nice to finally finish a race here.
What was the biggest concern today, Dario?
Probably Paul towards the end. I saw him behind me. I know he never gives up, and I was thinking this could be interesting because I know he was fast today, but once we got through the restarts and everything, it was I knew the car was fast enough.
Let's hear from the other half of this 1-2 finish here, Jan.
And of course, Paul Tracy, not only is it a 1-2, but it's in Canada. What an awesome performance for you and the team.
Well, it's awesome. Team Cogreen worked great. We've been working great for the last year and a half, and we've been waiting for this to happen. And what a better place. I mean, here in my hometown, Dario gets his first win of the year. You know, we get a 1-2, the first for the team. It's Barry Green's birthday today, my wife's birthday today. You know, couldn't ask for anything more.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And Paul Tracy, who grew up just about 10 miles from this racetrack, celebrates second. Look what this has done to the points, though, with Franchitti coming up into second, Christian Fittipaldi forward, and definitely, though Montoya is still up at the front in the points, he is very, very catchable.
Well, this makes the White Championship anybody's grab at this point. You've got the best guys in the business fighting for the championship all the way through the last half of the season. I can't wait to get to the last part of it.
Now, the Molson Indy has now been run. You think there was a celebration last week for Fittipaldi's win. There's going to be a big celebration in Toronto tonight as Team Green celebrates a 1-2 finish. Remember, it was a 1-2 finish, team finish, a week ago as well, with Christian Fittipaldi finishing in head of Michael Andretti. Now, our final Toyota Spotlight of the day, we're going to take a look at some of the action that made this race for the CART FedEx Championship Series at the exhibition place very memorable. Don't forget, next Sunday, it's the US 500 from Michigan Speedway. Our coverage will start on CART today at 11:30, then the race on ABC at 1:30. Paul Page for Parker Johnstone, Jan Vigas, and Gary Gerald. So long. ABC Sports is online at ESPN.com, part of the Go Network.